Warning: this video contains content that viewers may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to 100 Horrible Ways People Can Die, the podcast that explores some of the most gruesome and tragic ways in which people have met their end. I'm Jon.
And I'm Alex. Today's episode is our first.
That's right.
And maybe our only.
Hope not.
Called Crushed to Death, where we'll be exploring 3 ways in which people can get crushed to death.
It is 3 ways because that's all we have time for. We can't afford more.
Yeah, sorry.
We can only do 3.
Only can do 3.
So it's not 100 in the first episode. It's
100 between episodes.
Maybe.
And probably more than 100 if we go long enough.
Could be.
We're not going to stop at 100 and be like, all right, see you guys, unless we make $1 million.
True, that's right, Alex. Whether it's machinery, vehicles, or even buildings being
None
crushed
of which
to
we'll
death.
talk about today.
Yeah, I guess
we don't have
none
those
of
in our budget either.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, sorry, we got to start with cheap stuff first.
We should really do that. So why don't you give us one of these tragic examples? Why don't you tell us a story?
Okay. So today I think we'll start with weightlifting. Because what's a heavy object? Weights.
That's true. Weights
Makes
are
sense.
heavy. I haven't lifted weights in a while. Have you lifted weights in a while?
No. And I probably won't after this next story.
We'll see. Let's hear it.
All right. In 2016, Kyle, and we're just going to use the first name to protect the memory of people who died, but if you want to, you can look at our story links or whatever, and
Our sources,
that thank you, couldn't think of the word.
Yep.
And we'll have details.
Yeah, you could really find these stories pretty easy on the internet.
We tried to
Yeah.
not pick something too recent, events that are not too recent so that are still not as fresh, but something that's within the last 20 years or so. So
Some stuff's recent now, some stuff's really old sometimes, but you're right. And
we'll do some historical examples too.
They're easy to find, and we'll put our sources in.
Yeah. Kyle was an Iowa State University student, and he died in December of 2016 following a weightlifting accident at a gym. In this case, he was bench pressing and lifting a bar which had 315 pounds on it, which is quite a lot.
It's a lot of weight.
I could not do that.
I can't. I think both of us together might be able to lift that.
If
one
somebody
of us
asked
was on
me-
either side and we just kind of like had to move it,
Maybe.
but not very far.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could do that.
Yeah.
So he was bench pressing 315 pounds, and in this scenario, he had a spotter as well.
He had a spotter.
He had a spotter. So
Okay.
a spotter is somebody
Okay.
who's there to help them in case they can't lift the weight. And
So it just slipped out of his hands?
yeah, it looks like, based on the news stories, it just slipped out of his hand. The bar came on his neck and crushed his neck, and he later died in the hospital from his injuries.
Yowzers. You imagine 315 pounds crushing your throat? Like,
No, I can't even imagine any pounds.
Imagine how high. I wonder how high it was when it like fell off. If it just instantaneously like crushed him.
I don't know.
It's horrible.
It's pretty morbid.
It is bad.
Yeah.
I also have one for weightlifting, obviously, since we discussed it prior. And
Obviously.
then so I'm gonna go through mine, and then
Okay.
we'll share our statistics.
Sure.
All right. So I get ready for this. We've all experienced that moment of doubt while working out in the gym, when you lower the barbell and wonder if you're going to be able to lift it back up again. Having a spotter can make all the difference, turning a potentially dangerous situation into a minor setback. However, without a spotter, things can take a tragic turn. This was the case for Ben, a young athlete dedicated to staying in peak physical condition for his competitive contact sport. He played rugby. On the day of the incident, the gym was unusually quiet, and Ben was working out alone. It remains unclear exactly how long or how the accident occurred, but when Pat arrived at the gym for his daily workout, he immediately sensed something was wrong. The silence was eerie, and there was an unsettling stillness in the air. Like how I'm putting that in there?
It's a little too much.
I don't know. I'm just going to keep going.
I think you should also get rid of the line about having a spotter makes a difference. It doesn't make sense after what I just said.
Yeah, I guess it did make a difference in that situation. But hey,
Yeah.
it could make a difference. Who knows?
Usually it does.
Yeah. So let's see. As Pat prepared to begin his own routine, he glanced over and discovered Ben lying motionless on the bench, a 216-pound barbell crushing his neck. So similar to yours, only with 100 pounds less weight, roughly. Still a lot of weight.
Still a lot of weight.
Yeah. So, reacting swiftly, Pat lifted the bar off Ben and shouted for help. A few gym employees rushed to assist, performing CPR until paramedics arrived on the scene. Ben was quickly transported to the hospital, but the authorities estimated he could have been trapped under that bar for up to 30 agonizing minutes.
Jeez.
30 minutes sitting there crushing, like can't get the bar off, like just,
yeah. Was it on his neck or
Yeah,
his chest?
yeah,
So you
yeah, on
probably
his
couldn't
neck.
call for help or anything.
Yeah. So tragically, Ben succumbed to his injuries 2 days later. First you're laying there crushed, and then it takes 2 days to die of your injuries.
Yeah, that's awful.
The exact cause of his untimely death remains uncertain, but they didn't announce, we all know what happened, but they didn't tell, they didn't say anything. But the devastating loss of such a dedicated athlete serves as a heartbreaking reminder of the importance of safety precautions during exercise.
Right.
So, hey man, you got to be aware of like what you're doing, and it's just, very, very bad mistakes. So let's get into the stats. What do you got for us?
So according to a study from the American Journal of Sports Medicine in 2010, between the years of 1990 and 2007, there were approximately 114 deaths due to lifting of weights or weightlifting. And many of these cases are men. In fact, I think it was over 90%. So I think that makes sense, though. Men tend to lift more weights than women do.
Not me. But...
And not us. I haven't done it in years either. But also men will lift more weights, heavier weights, which probably, I assume, increases the risk of fatal injury. And the most common way to have a fatal injury from lifting weights is specifically lifting free weights on a bench and bench pressing. And I think in both of our examples, it's the same kind of injury where a bar or a free weight falls, hits somebody in the chest or neck, and either they can't breathe because they get asphyxiated from the neck being crushed, or it sits on their chest and they can't breathe. And I'm sure there's some cases where there's also trauma
on your head,
trauma to the head.
Yeah.
Not really crushing per se. But,
Right. Well, I did my stats a little different. I kind of just wrote it out here. So, although the tragic story of Ben's gym accident is certainly distressing, it's essential to understand that exercising in the gym is generally safe when appropriate precautions are taken. So, we don't want anyone afraid to go to the gym. Just take precautions if you're going to do bench pressing or something like that. The risks associated with gym workouts are relatively low. They're relatively low. So according to a study published in the Journal of Sports Medicine and Physical Fitness, the injury rate for gym-based exercise is about 2.3 injuries per 1,000 hours of activity. Mm-hmm. So that's considerably lower than injury for many popular sports, for football or rugby or any contact sport, basically.
That's for any type of injury.
Right, that's any type of injury, not death, but that's injury. So over the years, a number of gym-related accidents have remained relatively stable, so they're not going up or down. The increase in awareness of gym safety practices and advancements in fitness equipment design has contributed to the factors of improving overall safety. And what I have is the most common causes of gym injuries include improper technique. So these are just injuries. So it's bad technique, overexertion, lack of warming up, inadequate supervision or spotting, and then especially when you're lifting with heavy weights, right? And I have some tips here. You probably heard these before, or if you haven't, here they are. Warm up and stretch before your exercise to prepare your muscles for exercise to reduce the chances of risk and the risk of injury. Learn and practice proper techniques to ensure safety. So know how to lift, and if you don't know how to lift a weight a specific way, ask for help. There's people in the gym that'll help you out, and there's other people at the gym who are working out who are usually pretty open to this. If you say, hey, how do I use this, a lot of people will be more than happy to tell you. And there's also employees there though,
or hire a trainer if anything, if you have extra
or trainer
money.
Exactly. And then gradually increase the intensity, duration, and weight of your workouts to avoid overexertion and those injuries that happen because of that. Again, seek advice from gym staff or personal trainers like we just discussed. Use safety equipment like safety bars, self-spotting machines, and things like that to minimize your risk.
I mean, I guess the most common sense thing would be if you're not comfortable, then don't do it.
Don't do it if you, exactly.
And if you still want to do it and you're not comfortable, find somebody who can help and supervise.
Always have a spotter when using heavy weights.
Yeah, especially when you're bench pressing or using free weights.
If you can lose control of it, make sure you have a spotter because they
Right.
can help you.
You may get hurt doing push-ups, but you're probably not going to get crushed to death doing a push-up.
No.
You could, maybe, somehow. I
And-
don't know, but...
And really listen to your body, know
Listen
your
to your body,
limits, and if
start
you
slow.
experience any pain or discomfort,
Yeah.
stop the exercise and seek some help. Get some professional advice if you need to.
Right.
And I also wanted to point out, so even though his death was pretty tragic, he was an organ donor, and he donated his organs were given to a little girl named Harper. It saved her life, and even though she never met Ben, Ben lives on within Harper, and she was even the flower girl at the second marriage of Ben's dad. So they remain close. So he saved a life by donating his organs. So, I mean, maybe consider being an organ donor. All right, so let's go on to our next thing. You got another one for us?
Yes, I do.
Let's hear it.
Elevator.
Okay, elevators. I got one for elevators.
I have one as well.
All right, let's hear yours.
Now, before we start, are there more crushing deaths from weights or elevators? What do you think?
Man, probably it's hard, man. They're both so low. Probably weights.
I think elevators.
You think elevators?
Yeah.
Could be.
Could be. We'll answer that question after this break.
Yeah.
There is no break.
There's no
We have no sponsors yet.
We have no sponsors. If you want to sponsor us, just get in contact.
You probably don't.
Leave us a message.
Yeah. All right. A tragic elevator story would be the story of Suzanne, who was a 41-year-old advertising executive in New York City on Madison Avenue. And one day in the office, she got crushed to death by an elevator. So what happened was she was getting on the elevator in the lobby, and apparently her foot got caught in the gap between the door and the elevator. So where the track
Must have been like an older elevator then, because
Yes.
like the gaps are very small and newer ones, right?
Yes,
So-
they're designed to be smaller and newer elevators, and they have more safety precautions. But in older elevators, there could be a 5 or 6 inch gap sometimes. And
Wow.
I would assume that this elevator was much older based on the news stories I read. So her foot got caught in that gap, and she tripped. And as she tripped, the elevator lurched upwards. Because she was stuck with her foot in the door,
Right.
she got trapped between the wall and the shaft of the elevator and the door of the elevator.
And we just
As the
crushed.
elevator went up, and she was crushed between those two objects.
Ouch.
And apparently there were several people in the elevator with her who saw it all unfold, and that must have been horrifically tragic to see that happen.
I would not have wanted to be in that elevator.
And apparently many people in that company did not want to ever use that elevator again
I
either.
bet.
And those people may have been very close to her too. And so as she got trapped, she obviously was killed by that. And unfortunately, it was also very difficult to get her body out too, apparently. And it was not a very pretty situation.
Sounds horrendous.
It sounds like an
Horrible.
awful way to die.
Horrible. All right, let's move into my story,
One
then
good
go to the stats.
One
What do you
more
got?
follow-up story about this is this incident actually made a large amount of news in New York City and nationwide, and prompted some safety reforms in elevator design and in building codes in New York City. So now in the building department code, it's required to have a door lock system, so the doors must be closed before the elevator can go off, and that should hopefully prevent an event like this ever happening
Man,
again.
that happened in 2011.
2011.
Man, I thought in 2011 they would have already had that type of like safety where the doors aren't closed, the elevator doesn't move, already in there. Because I mean, that's crazy.
Don't know enough about
I'm glad
that.
they
but
do.
It
Yeah,
might have been grandfathered in
Right,
if it was
right.
an older design.
could have been old. Yeah. All right, so my story is a little older than yours. Once we do that, this story, we'll go into some stats for the people. So, all right, so let's see. In 2003, a tragic incident. Okay, so first I want to say I did not use real names in this at all.
Okay.
These are completely made up names. But if you search for this on the internet, you'll still find it, but you'll see the names are different. So, all right, so in 2003, a tragic incident occurred at a renowned hospital in the heart of Texas. Chris, a diligent hospital worker, had been using the stairs for 2 days due to elevator being out of order. One fateful day, Chris noticed that the warning sign had disappeared, signaling that the elevator was back in service. Overjoyed at the thought of avoiding the tiresome climb, Chris eagerly pressed the call button. As the elevator approached, Chris's colleague Jamie appeared from around the corner. Panting and exhausted, Jamie inquired, "Is the elevator working again? I can't tell you how much I've been dreading those stairs." With a reassuring nod, Chris welcomed Jamie as the elevator doors slid open. They both entered, but when Jamie stepped in, the doors suddenly began to close. Caught off guard, Jamie found himself trapped between the metal jaws of the elevator, struggling to break free. Chris panicked and desperately tried to press the door open button. But the elevator had already started ascending. Jamie's eyes widened with fear as the elevator continued to move upward. Despite his best efforts, he couldn't free himself from the elevator's merciless grip. The ceiling drew closer and closer, and in a heart-wrenching moment, Jamie was pinned against it. The elevator abruptly halted, but the damage had been done. A devastated Chris called for help, but it took over an hour for the rescue team to arrive. Throughout the agonizing wait, Chris was forced to confront the tragic reality of Jamie's lifeless body caught in the twisted metal of the elevator doors. The harrowing incident left a permanent mark on the hospital's history and served as a sobering reminder of the importance of safety and maintenance in everyday life. So, I have some stats here written out a bit, but let's hear what you got.
Okay. Based on data from a 2006 report, which used data from the Consumer Product Safety Commission and some data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there's about 31 people a year, somewhere between 28 and 31 people a year on average, killed by elevators. About 17,000 injuries. And John, you have some information about how many rides are taken on an elevator, how many trips are taken.
Yeah.
For context.
Yeah.
So in those scenarios, more than 90% of those are elevators. There's also escalators involved in this data. 56% of the fatalities were related to workers or maintenance work being performed on the elevator.
Right.
Meaning that the other 44%.
Right.
Just had to do the math real quick. Make sure I got that one right.
Close enough.
Were from passengers. So
Gotcha.
when you do hear about stories of people dying due to an elevator, there's roughly a 50% chance that it was somebody who was working on the elevator.
Gotcha.
So it's far more dangerous to work on service an elevator than it is to ride on one. When you look in a little bit more detail, a lot of those deaths, so about 50% of those occupational deaths, and a certain percentage, I don't have that number handy, were related to falls, so people falling down an elevator
Down the
shaft.
Yeah.
So the odds of being crushed, or the chances of being crushed by an elevator, are smaller. So maybe 25 to 30%, depending on how you would define being crushed. So out of those fatalities, only 25%, well, I shouldn't say only 25, but about 25% were related to being crushed to death.
So I didn't look into like the worker type of injuries. I just looked over the overall. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands it's important to understand that elevators are still very, very safe means of transportation. So I also used the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics and Consumer Product Safety Commission, and I got elevators were involved in, and I just put 30, like you said, 28 to 31 or whatever. I just wrote 30 rough estimate. So 30 fatalities and 17,000 injuries annually in the United States. But you have to consider that elevators, they have more than 18 billion passenger trips per year.
Right.
18 billion with a B. That's a lot of trips. So the likelihood of being involved in an elevator accident are extremely low. In fact, the odds of experiencing a fatality in an elevator accident are 1 in 600 million. So you're more than likely you're not going to die in an elevator accident.
Right.
Let's see. So elevator accidents have been decreasing year over year thanks to improved safety regulations, regular maintenance, and advancements in elevator technology. The most common cause of elevator accidents include mechanical failure, human error, and lack of proper maintenance. And majority of these are all just minor injuries. So here's some ways to ensure that you'll be safe and minimize the risk of being hurt in an elevator. So here's some tips for that. And number one, wait for the elevator to arrive and its doors to fully open before entering. If the doors are closing and someone doesn't push that open door button for you, don't try to like rush in or
apparently those
jam your arm in
buttons
the
don't do
elevator.
anything.
Sometimes, I don't know, maybe they don't. Pay attention to the floor indicator, the level indicator,
Right.
and make sure the elevator comes to a complete stop before you get in or out of the elevator. That's very important, I think. And I think that, you know, it's tragic what happened in both of these circumstances. But I think both of them could have been avoided, and it's not their fault, obviously, but
Right.
situational awareness is very important. If you pay attention to your environment and your surroundings, and you notice that a door is closing or there's a gap in the floor or it's uneven, you know, just stay back, you know.
Right.
Wait.
It's very
wait for-
easy to trip.
Yeah,
Even if there's
super
an
easy.
inch or two gap between the elevator and the floor, it'd be very easy to trip. Even if you don't have a fatal injury, just to trip and fall and hit your head or break your wrist or something like that, especially
Yeah.
for older people,
Yeah.
people who have disabilities or younger kids who sometimes have, you know, gotten stuck in the gap.
Yeah, that's horrible. I have another note here that if an elevator gets stuck between floors,
Mhm.
which sometimes does happen, just remain calm, use the emergency phone or the phone or the alarm button and call for assistance. Do not try to pry the doors open and like squeeze out between floors. If that thing starts moving again, crushed. Now, I haven't seen any stories of that happening, but I'm sure that it has.
I'm sure it has as well.
Yeah, so just pay attention and understand that the statistical probability of a serious elevator accident is very low. You can confidently get on an elevator and not worry about really
Yeah.
being hurt.
Something else to think about, you know, not related to crushing. If there's an open elevator shaft, if there's somebody performing work on an elevator,
Don't push the button.
stay clear of it.
Yeah.
Because
They might not have turned the switch off. Don't push the button.
right, but also you don't want to fall down an elevator
Yeah,
shaft.
for sure.
Even though it's not crushing related, it's still very, very horrific.
Absolutely.
Be careful of weight limits on elevators. There's stories of people getting on an elevator with heavy objects, especially in a commercial sense, wheeling things on there, and they're above the weight limit, and there's an accident because of that.
Yep. And I know a lot of the newer elevators, they have like an indicator that'll buzz if it's over the weight.
They may not
and-
even allow you to go up or down.
Yeah, right.
sometimes,
Right.
Yeah.
They'll just like make noise to it and
Yeah.
bright lights to get you out of there.
And anything you can do to make a construction worker's life easier. So, you know, if you drop your keys down in an elevator shaft, there have been fatalities from people trying to reach down and grabbing them.
Yeah, that'd be horrible.
Yeah.
So I think the main takeaways of this story is it's tragic. These losses, these deaths are tragic, but you are safe to get in an elevator. Just be aware of your situation, be aware of the surroundings. Building owners should make sure the maintenance is done on the building, and then training for the employees to make sure that they're following guidelines to, you know, stay safe while they're working on the elevators.
Maybe we'll do an episode on elevators on their own.
We
one
could
day.
probably fill an episode with just
Oh
elevator
yeah,
deaths.
there's so many ways you can die from an elevator. But statistics show stairs are less safe than an elevator. You're more likely to trip and fall down the stairs
or
and
have
die,
a heart attack.
or have a heart attack, or have the stairs fall apart. That's happened too.
Jeez, yeah. Poor
So,
maintenance on stair. Well, let's move on to the next crushing event. I think that we were going to move on
Got
to
one more here for you today.
We're going to move on to being crushed by other people.
Yeah. So
You can literally be crushed by other people if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time.
and unfortunately, that happens in great numbers at times.
Yeah, very great
It's not
numbers.
funny, John.
It's funny because you said great numbers, and it's always great numbers, right?
It's not always great numbers. Sometimes it can be one or two people.
Oh,
It
I
can't
haven't
be
seen any of
zero.
those. It can't be zero.
I will give you a story where it's just one person.
All right, let's hear some stories first. You want me to go first? You want to go first on this one?
How about I go first on this one?
Sounds good.
All right. So I have a very unusual and unique situation that happened here. And this happened in 2008. And I'm going to probably mispronounce this name.
Where did it happen?
It happened in Valley Stream, New York, at a
Okay.
Walmart.
Ooh, Walmart.
So this made national news and resulted in some lawsuits, and we'll talk about that too. Jim Tai, I believe is how you pronounce his name. I
Okay.
don't know. I'm sorry if that's wrong. So on Black Friday in 2008, Walmart was advertising a bunch of doorbuster deals and a bunch of other things, and a lot of people lined up. Apparently there were over 2,000 people in line.
Remember those Black Friday days?
Yes, back when Black Friday actually had good sales prices, possibly, or
people waiting in line
people
at 2
actually
o'clock
waited
in the
in line
morning
instead of
till-
going to
yeah,
Amazon.
Yeah.
So by 5 a.m. there were thousands of people in line for Walmart, and the crowd was obviously very agitated, I guess, and pushy, and so they were pushing against the front doors. And what happened was, apparently the management in Walmart requested for people to go in there and, help deal with the crowd, and they were pressing against the doors, and there was a lot of unpreparedness for this going on. And as the doors opened, the crowd rushed in and knocked over Dimtai, and he was apparently trampled and crushed to death by the crowd.
Like a stampede of people just
Yes.
like walking over top and squishing him,
Yes.
crushing him under their
And
feet.
according to some news articles, he was trying to protect a pregnant lady from getting crushed, and that may be why he also
Jeez.
got killed as well.
Did the pregnant lady make it, I hope?
I believe so.
Not in the story.
It's
so
not
she
in the
must have made
story,
it.
so she made it hopefully with no injuries, and hopefully her newborn was okay too. So as a result of that, he was crushed. Police arrived and performed CPR. CPR was unsuccessful, and he was pronounced dead an hour later at the hospital. The official cause of death was asphyxia. So because of the weight of the people, he
Suffocation, yeah.
suffocated, and that seems to be in these large events that have happened, mostly internationally. We
Right. So
see
you
them
get
a lot
crushed
more in
so,
other countries.
So
People
tight
get
they
crushed so
can't
tight
breathe.
they can't breathe. So they paid a wrongful death suit to the family. Eventually, they did fight it in court. Eventually, they also apparently got a $7,000 fine from the government for this. So,
$7,000 for life from the government.
well, that was the OSHA fine. So
Wow.
they also settled for the family for significantly more, but obviously still not a lot.
Yeah.
So
Kind of horrible.
this
horrible
story
way to
also
go.
made a lot of news back in 2008. It's very tragic. I believe it's the only case of anybody ever being crushed to death while shopping in the United States.
And it would be a Walmart.
Said it would be a Walmart, of course. But as some of the articles mentioned, something like 5% of all purchases in stores at the time were on Black Friday were at a Walmart. Walmart is by far the largest retailer.
Now, because we publicized this horrible, tragic event at a Walmart,
Hopefully,
they'll
as
never
a result
sponsor
of this,
us. They'll never sponsor us now.
I wouldn't really want to be sponsored by Walmart,
Yeah.
to be honest.
True. Well,
I'm just saying that if they actually threw money at me, I'd probably take it.
I was gonna say, well,
So,
we have no sponsors, so
we have no sponsors. We probably never will have sponsors. Just throwing
no.
that out
If
there.
you want to sponsor, just leave us a message. We'll be more than happy to accept sponsorship. From
We'll,
people.
we'll hear you out, and then we'll probably say no.
Or subscribe. You can just subscribe if you want.
Or don't. I don't really care.
True. Okay, so my story is a pretty famous story.
Okay.
It is about a Who concert that happened in 1979. If you look up online, if you look up the Who concert disaster, you'll find the story.
For those of you who don't know, The Who was a very popular band. I believe they're still.
They
Are they still touring?
I don't know.
Did they have like their 75th reunion tour or
No,
something right now?
I really don't pay much
No, I think
attention.
they actually
Maybe.
did have a reunion tour a
Yeah.
year or two ago.
Yes. So they're a very popular rock band, and in 1979 they were on a world tour. And let's see. So in '79, the Who embarked on the United States leg of their world tour, which began in September with 7 memorable performances. So they were in New Jersey, they were in Madison Square Garden, in New York City. And this marked the band's first series of shows following the tragic loss of their drummer Keith Moon in 1978.
Which was not due to weightlifting or
I don't
elevators.
know. Yeah, probably not. Probably not.
Don't actually know.
Yeah. And it introduced their the former drummer of Small Faces, who I don't know who that is. Do you know Small Faces? I guess that must be another band.
Sorry.
Keith Jones as his successor. So Keith Jones was going to be performing as his replacement.
Mhm.
And so the band had taken some time off, and they resumed their tour on November 30th. And they had just finished a captivating show at the Detroit Masonic Temple Auditorium.
Sure.
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 In Cincinnati. So the Cincinnati concert, which took place at the Riverfront Coliseum, was the third show in the leg of the tour, following a spectacular performance the night before at the Pittsburgh Civics Arena. So
Okay.
they sold
Want to get to that point?
Yeah. They sold 18,348 tickets. So it was a very highly anticipated event. So this show, pretty much sold out, right? So
The Who are still touring.
they are okay. So
Yeah. I'm not surprised. They'll outlive us all.
However, a series of unfortunate events led to a heart-rending?
Heart-trending.
Heart-rending.
Yeah, heart-trending. I don't know what that is.
Heart-rending tragedy.
Tragedy was heart-trending. No, it says in the script
It says heart-trending, so I must have typoed something.
Good job.
Here. Yeah, that's fine.
That's why we don't have ChatGPT write our episodes.
Maybe next time we'll use ChatGPT as a guest, special guest.
Maybe.
All right, we definitely will. All right.
Just call him Skynet.
No. He can't be Skynet. He's
Can we
just
play
a
the
chatbot.
Terminator theme when it comes on?
That'd be good. All right, so we have to give him a voice though, because ChatGPT or them or ChatGPT's inanimate.
We have
so
to ask them what their pronouns are.
Let's get back on track. All right, so miscommunication from a radio announcement led to a sizable crowd of general admission ticket holders to gather early in anticipation of entry at 3, and by 5, a large group assembled outside the venue. So, miscommunication by a radio station kind of caused this, right? Because all these people showed up early. I don't know.
I'm not an investigator. I wouldn't say that.
As the impatient crowd heard the band warming up, they assumed The Who had begun to play and surged towards the open doors. So, let me get to these doors. So there was a bunch of doors around this venue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was people in front of all these doors, but only one set of doors opened, like on the right side, to allow people in. All the other doors were still closed. So people were like banging on the doors and trying to get, in the windows next to the doors, trying to get them to open the doors because they heard them, start warming up.
Mm-hmm.
But these one set of doors were open, so people started crowding through those doors. So what happened was as they approached the doors, they just started trampling other concert goers. So these concert goers they were just pushing each other, and tragically 11 people ended up losing their lives. 11 people
awful.
died at this concert from, again, asphyxiation, right? They were trampled, they were crushed into the doors.
Right.
26 people were injured, and this is another thing. Unaware of the catastrophe, right? That was happening outside. The Who played their entire set, and they weren't informed until after that was all over with. They weren't even told until
the crowd probably didn't
left
even
the
know
store.
either. Yeah.
So this concert, right? It serves as a reminder of the importance of crowd control, clear communication, and safety measures during large events. That's basically what I have. So next we have our stats, our tips. So what do you got for stats on tramples and crushing by people in crowds?
So based on the little bit of research, which is basically close to 0, but it's not 0. I did read like 1 or 2 articles. There do seem to be more crushing deaths around the world than in the United States. And I think that has to do with a couple of different factors. I think, first of all, having more of a car culture. We don't have those tight, narrow streets. We tend to drive. We don't have as much public transportation outside of stadiums and sporting events and concert venues like this one. We probably don't have the large number of people assembled in one area in narrow spaces that cause these type of events to happen. But we've had several really horrific incidents that have happened even within the last 25 to 30 years in the US, where there have been people who've been crushed or trampled. We had, for example, the Stanton nightclub fire in 2003, where the nightclub caught fire, the fire exits were blocked, and over 100 people died in that, as a combination of fire and crowd crushing. People who were able to get to the doors weren't able to open them because I believe they opened out. So that's a common way people get trapped. If they try to leave a building, the doors open out, but the crowd is pushing onto them.
You mean they open in and they can't?
Open in.
Yeah.
So fire doors should be opening out so that people can push their way out.
Or go either way, right? Yeah.
Or either way. I don't know if that's a thing. The doors go either way.
I think so.
Maybe. But in those kind of situations, people escaping from one tragedy in the fire can lead to people getting trampled or crushed in another way. There's been a couple of other incidents. We had Astroworld happen 2 years ago, I believe, in 2022. And then we had another fire in 2003 where also, I think it was 30 people died as a combination of fire. If there's ever a situation where you're in a crowded venue, if you are to be trampled by a crowd, especially in the United States, that's probably the most likely that would happen. So I think we also have some safety tips about that too. But it is a relatively uncommon event in the United States. but it has the potential to cause a lot of casualties just because of the large number of people. Now, I personally hate
Right.
crowds, so people who hate crowds, people who live in smaller towns, people who stay away from concerts, people who hit the microphone and knock the video camera over are much less likely to get crushed because they're just not in that situation. So it's very situation dependent as opposed to, like, I don't know, an earthquake, for example.
True, where that could happen out of the blue. It's a natural disaster.
Right.
So, all right. So I'm going to lead off with saying that, you know, tragic events that unfolded during the Who concert and all these other events that you've mentioned are very distressing, of course.
Yes.
But it's crucial that people understand that attending concerts, going to places like bars or whatever, is generally safe.
Millions of people do that every week.
Yeah. When proper precautions are taken, the likelihood of experiencing these types of incidences are very low, especially when considering the vast number of concerts held worldwide, and there's so many events that occur where there's tons of people. So don't be afraid to go to an event because you're going to get crushed or trampled. Obviously, that's very, very low number.
You're more likely probably to die driving to the event than you are to be trampled or crushed at the event, statistically.
Right. And we want to point out that in recent decades, the number of serious concert-related or even any event-related has been significantly decreased. The incidents have been decreased, and it's largely due to improved crowd management techniques, enhanced safety measures, stricter venue regulations, and it's very, very hard. It was very challenging. I could not find anything that would help me provide a comprehensive year-over-year like statistics on this
There's
type of
not
thing.
really year-over-year data because it's such an unlikely event in the United States.
And that even makes it even more evidence that overall going to a concert or a bar or any kind of venue is relatively safe. And like I said, the safety is improving. The probability of being killed at a music event are extremely low. Like I don't have an exact figure. I wrote down here that there's just a vast number of events, and there's varying circumstances, and it's just I can't find the numbers to provide an accurate thing. But it is very clear that facilities and concerts and these types of injuries at these events is rare.
Right.
So I do have the most common causes of concert incidents, including overcrowding. The most common causes of these incidents is overcrowding, lack of proper security, insufficient exits, emergency exits, poor communication between event organizers and attendees. And I got some tips here to minimize the risk of injury if you're in any of these situations, right? So familiarize yourself with the venue layout, including where are the emergency exits and the security personnel locations. So, you know, you fall, you twist your ankle or whatever, and get to they usually have a first aid area somewhere. Be mindful of your environment and know where all of these emergency things are.
Try to know where the choke points are. So if there is a very narrow doorway,
don't go that way.
Try not to stay there.
Right.
Try to disperse from that. If you're with a group of people, also be aware of that. Make sure they're aware of that as well. A lot of times now, I think you see at festivals and events, they have more blatant security measures. They'll have railings. They'll have people guiding people. And I know it sucks sometimes when you go there and people are like, go here, but a lot of times that's for people's safety to prevent issues.
Yes, that's why they're pushing you into those directions. And
sometimes, not always. Sometimes it's just because they want to charge you more money.
Sometimes, you get the VIP or whatever. Yeah. So also arrive early to avoid large crowds. Give yourself ample time to find your seat or a comfortable place to stand in the venue, right? Yeah. Be aware of your surroundings and stay away from like aggressive fans. Like sometimes they have those pits where people are like hanging around inside those pits. You know, you may want to
keep in mind careful. If you are doing that, there is a much higher probability of you getting injured or hurt or trampled or killed.
Which is my next point. Avoid that risky behavior. So
unless you really want to.
Avoid engaging in risky behavior such as excessive alcohol consumption or drug use or any kind of unruly conduct. So that can help prevent your injury. And make sure that if you feel uncomfortable or unsafe in an area, just move to a different area. You don't have to stay normally. You don't have to stay at an exact spot. You can move around inside your area of the venue. And then make sure you listen to the safety announcement made by the organizers. If somebody comes up and they say something's happening, pay attention to that. Don't just gaff it off and keep doing what you're doing. And if there is an emergency, remain calm, follow instructions from security and emergency responders.
And something to consider also is that these type of events could occur anywhere where there's a large group of people. It's not just, for example, a concert. You could be in a university, a movie theater, on the subway, an airport, anywhere where there's a large number of people, all really anxious and eager to get out and do something, whether to escape a situation, or in the case of your example, eager to get into a concert, or my example, eager to get into a store. There could be mass chaos, and that could result in some of these injuries.
Yeah, well, understandable. But unfortunately, being crushed to death is a reality that sometimes you just can't escape. But it's important to remember that these horror stories of those people who have lost their lives in a tragic way, it doesn't mean that you can't go and enjoy yourself at these events. Just be mindful.
Yeah, and I think that's it for today's episode of 100 Horrible Ways People Can Die. Unless you have any last words.
I'm good.
Maybe that's not the right words to use.
I'm good for now. What are we doing next week?
I think next week we're gonna try being sliced to death by a machine.
Or somewhere about being sliced to death?
Something like that.
Well, join us next week on our being sliced to death.
Another horrible episode of 100 Horrible Ways People Can Die.
And remember, stay safe out there.